We've all heard of League of Legends. It's a little MOBA with, over 100 million players. It's also notoriously difficult, which makes getting started a bigger struggle than navigating a tax return form. Never fear though, dear viewer, PCGamesN are here to help. The first thing you have to do in League of Legends is pick a champion to play as. With over 130 on the roster, it's not an easy decision, which is why we're about to run down the top 10 LoL champions for beginners.
You won't find any Gallifreyan Time Lords in League of Legends, but you will find Ekko, the boy who shattered time. He's an assassin-style champion to be played in the top of LoL's 3 lanes. If you want to learn the hallowed techniques of skill shots, positioning and timing, Ekko is the chap to choose. With abilities all themed around manipulating time, he can quickly slow and stun enemies, teleport across the battlefield and even rewind the clock. His E, a nifty trick called Phase Dive, lets Ekko dash right up into an enemy's grill. By closing the gap between Ekko and a target, you can easily start fights or chase down enemies who are trying to escape. Ekko can be a bit squishy to begin with. Equip him with the items that help build ability power, however, and you'll soon find he's an exceptional damage dealer. And when your enemies are slow to a treacle-like crawl, delivering strike after strike isn't so hard after all.
Another champion for the top lane, Maokai is tough as old bark, probably due to the fact that he's an angry, walking treant. Never mistake him for an ent, because there's nothing worse than tree racism. His job as a tank means he teaches you how to effectively absorb damage and the importance of having good vision over the battle. While Maokai's job is to take damage so your allies don't have to, it doesn't mean he can't smack the enemy around himself. For example, pressing E will see him throw a baby tree onto the map, which will chase down enemies and explode. Hey, just because your culture deplores infanticide doesn't mean you can judge. These saplings help you harass enemies that are charging down your lane. They distract them from the real threat, your damage-dealing lane buddy. As Maokai, you'll be stood right next to enemies frequently, so remember to buy the Sunfire Cape. It's an item that constantly damages any champion who dares come close to you.
Let's swap the action to the middle lane with Ahri, a mage, and more importantly, a cat person with 9 tails. Clearly designed for people who make this face when watching anime, she's one of the most popular champions in LoL, and deservedly so. While being very dangerous, she's also quite easy to get to grips with. You'll easily learn the basics of crowd control and farming with Ahri's Orb of Deception. A ball of energy that returns back to Ahri after it's thrown, it damages anything it touches. Hurling it out at crowds of minions will make short work of them. And remember, every last hit you get on those guys earns you gold. You'll want to use that gold to buy AP boosting items like the Luden's Ekko, which helps make your spells even more devastating. But do be careful, Ahri may be strong, but she's fairly immobile. At least until she unlocks her ultimate ability, that is. Spirit Rush lets you dash 3 times in a row, and with each dash, energy bolts strike out at nearby enemies. It's an excellent way of escaping from danger.
Middle lane champions are expected to hold their domain on their own. That's why you need a devastating spell slinger like Morgana. She may look like the missing member of Evanescence, but she has access to some of the game's most table-turning abilities. Take Black Shield, for instance. It's a defensive spell that protects against stuns and slows. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing an enemy preparing to stun you, only for a Black Shield to ignore the effect and keep you in the fight. As a mage, you'll want to build ability power with items like the Morellonomicon, which also handily reduces cooldowns on spells. If you don't fancy taking on the mid lane solo, Morgana is also a great support champion for use in the bottom lane. With just a press of E, you can Black Shield your lane buddy from incoming attacks, and they'll definitely thank you for it.
If your mantra is speak softly and carry a big gun, well, Graves caters for at least half of that. He's a marksman packing an absurdly large double drain pipe of a shotgun and works wonderfully as a jungler. Oh, what now, you may ask? As we've said before, most champions spend their time in either the top, middle or bottom lanes. Those that don't can be found in the jungle areas between them. From this area, a jungler can easily farm the creatures hiding between the trees and jump into the lanes that are in need of backup. Graves is excellent at this. Using his Q will stop enemies trying to escape into the jungle. End of the line is a skill shot that blasts explosives outwards, which return back to Graves, causing even more damage. Should you become an expert jungler with Graves, you can then take him to the bottom lane to play as an AD carry. This role is focused on dealing the most damage, and where Graves' explosive collateral damage ability comes in really useful.
Another great jungler is Vi. Her strongest asset is her massive damage potential, which is handy for defeating the jungle creeps. Her skills are also well tuned for ganking, which is where you burst out the jungle for a surprise attack on an enemy champion. Take Assault and Battery for instance. We're assuming it's a skill named after Vi's law enforcement career. A simple click on an enemy sees her zoom towards them, knock them in the air, and finally pummel them into the ground. Ouch. If you can get an enemy in Vi's sights, there's no escaping this brutal ultimate attack.
As we mentioned earlier, AD carries are hefty damage dealers. They're often ranged attackers backed up by a support champion. If you fancy stepping up to the challenge of this most important role, Caitlyn should be in your sights. She's a great introduction to AD carry thanks to having a long range and being quick on her feet. To increase Caitlyn's attack damage, you'll need items, so farming for gold is super important. But with the right equipment, skill shots like Piltover Peacemaker will deal great damage to an enemy as it passes through. For enemies just out of reach, the Yordle Snap Trap can be used to root them in place and give Caitlyn a chance to line up the shot. Always remember that Caitlyn is a bit squishy though. Your items will keep you dangerous, but you'll need to stay out of the big brawls and attack at range. You should always have a support champion in lane with you. They'll make sure you're safe. Well, in theory anyway. Don't say we didn't warn you about team play.
Lucian is a very different kind of AD carry. While Caitlyn deals with slower paced critical hits, Lucian is all about persistent damage. Dressed like a piece of Mass Effect concept art, he sprints around the map shooting firework like lasers. The key to using Lucian well is making the most out of his speed. Every time you use one of his abilities, you get an extra hit. This means you can be constantly applying pressure to an enemy. Lucian will need lots of items to increase his attack damage stats, so make sure you farm those minion waves. Putting in the work brings huge rewards. Lucian's ultimate, the Culling, is a barrage of shots that can take out weaker champions in very little time. Even tanks will try and run away from this attack, so it's well worth putting the effort into. Like Caitlyn though, for all of his attack power, Lucian does need support. He's at his peak in the bottom lane with a tanky champion for backup, so be sure to buddy up with someone in the lobby.
Let's say you want to support an AD carry player. What champion should you use for this important role? Braum is your man. I mean, with that moustache, he's anyone's man, but he's specifically good at being a support. Braum's skills are focused on protecting teammates and slowing down enemies. His best skill is Stand By Me. Rather than playing the 1986 film starring Will Wheaton, pressing W will instead cause Braum to leap to a nearby ally. He'll then be buffed with bonus armor and magic resistance, and your ally gets those boosts too. And if that weren't generous enough, you can completely block any attack with the Unbreakable skill. Learning how to combine these abilities is the key to Braum. Use him well, and you can be an AD carry's lifeline in battle. Equip him with the items that boost his defensive stats, and he'll be the most immovable object that keeps your team on their feet.
Leona is a real team player. While Braum is all about keeping the friendly AD carry safe, Leona loves getting stuck in a fight and battering the enemy ADC. Her main abilities are great for crowd control, inflicting stuns on enemies to keep them stationary. And when the enemy can't move, they can't escape Leona's massive sword. Zenith Blade will quickly become your favourite skill. Using it throws out a solar image of Leona's aforementioned massive sword. If it hits an enemy champion, Leona will be catapulted towards them. The enemy will be routed to the spot, offering a great opportunity to deal some damage. It's attacks like the Zenith Blade that make Leona brilliant at starting fights. Just make sure your AD carry is ready to join you in the smackdown before you do anything crazy, okay?
And those are the 10 champions you should try if you're new to League of Legends. It may have looked all scary before, but now you've got all the tools you need to win a game on Summoner's Rift. Oh, and before you lock in with your new champion, don't forget to like and subscribe. It is the traditional pre-MOBA ritual, don't you know?